Terry Weber, and I'm the Elder Care Coordinator here on UK campus. And Lisa Collins is with the Office of Work Life, and she is our tech guru and will be our hostess for our online streaming folks. But before I introduce our guest speaker today, just a few housekeeping rules, primarily for our online folks. If you have a question for Dr. McNees during the presentation, please click on the chat icon and type your question into the question box on the control panel. Does that all make sense? Dr. McNees will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation, so we won't try to interrupt you during your presentation. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Karen McNees. She's a registered dietitian here with UK Health and Wellness and has worked here since 2005. I did a little snooping. She's like an icon. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Syracuse and her doctorate at health promotion here at UK. I'm so excited for her to be here today to share her expertise and her knowledge regarding the MIND diet. Because until there's a cure for Alzheimer's disease, we have to be proactive in our own brain health. So, Karen.
Thank you, Terry. Let me just take a moment here and get the mic situated. All right, do you want to make sure the online folks can hear me okay this way? Yeah, okay, great. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Great to be here, and thank you again to Elder Care for the invitation to be here. Like Terry said, I'm one of two actually full-time dietitians at the UK Health and Wellness Program, and we just like to remind folks that the UK Health and Wellness Program is a tremendous benefit for UK employees, where you can access a variety of programming for free or very low cost. And so we have experts and resources available related to nutrition, movement, as well as well-being. So we just kind of want you to keep us in mind in the future for any of those needs. And certainly after today, you know, if this spurs questions about your own nutritional habits or needs, or you want to dive a little deeper into the MIND diet and figure out how you can apply it for yourself or family members, please let us know. We do free one-on-one consultations that can be done in person, online, or on the phone. So we can certainly work with you on your individual needs after this as well. Okay. Okay, so MIND, what does this stand for, right? Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. One thing I do want to say at the outset of this presentation is that this is a pretty new diet, okay? This is pretty new research that's still in its infancy. And as it typically goes in the nutrition world, the headlines outpace the research. So everybody know what I mean by that, right? That's usually how it goes, okay? The research can't keep up with the internet. That's just the world that we live in. So we would only kind of be prudent to keep that in mind during our discussion today. I'm going to present the best I can to you today based on the information that we have, but with the understanding that more research could come, you know, right down the pike that does change this discussion a little bit, okay? So a little bit of a background here. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the Mediterranean Dash diets are in particular in a few moments, but for now I just want you to know that the MIND diet is a combination of the Mediterranean and the Dash diets, because those both have been shown to be related to cognitive decline. But what the researchers here at Rush University in Chicago did was take elements of the Dash diet and the Mediterranean diet and combine them into the MIND diet. So what they tried to do was identify the most impactful elements of each of those diets as it relates to brain health, okay? And really try to maximize the cognitive benefits that we can get of those two diets by combining them. The first research done on the MIND diet looked at global cognitive decline, not necessarily Alzheimer's, which I'm going to talk about that research in just a moment, but the first MIND diet research was about cognitive decline. And what they found was that people who were in the top tertile or top 30% of compliance for the MIND diet, you can see there, it was equivalent to being 7.5 years younger in age. Okay, so that is really encouraging. And that's kind of where they got the idea to say, hey, let's move beyond just kind of global cognitive decline and look at how this might help with Alzheimer's disease itself. Okay, so like I said, this is in its infancy, right? 2015 was when these two studies about the cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease as it relates to the MIND diet first came out. So we are only about 3 years in here in terms of the MIND diet, and we want to keep that in mind, okay? Now, in this study with Alzheimer's disease, the MIND diet was not an intervention. So I like to explain that to people, right? A little bit what the research looked like. So they were just following people's diets as they were consuming them. Okay, they followed a little over 900 people for about 4.5 years. So that's pretty comprehensive. And these people aged from 58 to 98 years old. Okay, so the prime time where we would see some of that cognitive decline or incidence of Alzheimer's disease. They earned points, these participants, their diets earned points based on how many of these healthful brain foods they were having and how often they were also minimizing the less healthful ones. They could have a max score of 15 points, and that's going to come into play here in a moment as we kind of talk about what the research showed us. But again, a couple caveats, right? This was simply an observational study, okay, where you're looking at what people are consuming and what their kind of risk was for a disease, okay? That doesn't mean causation, and we always like to point that out in the research, okay? We can just make an association, but we can't say eating this diet caused this lower incidence of Alzheimer's disease. The research, again, is not quite there, but it's certainly a promising start. And of course, the authors are keen to point out on all of these studies, right, that we need a lot more definitive, controlled, longitudinal type research to really be able to replicate this and see the value of it going forward. Well, like I said, it is a promising start, and you're going to see this with some of the data here, okay? Now, rigorous adherence to the MIND diet was defined as a score of 8.5 to 12.5. And what did I say that max score was? 15, right? So the top tertile, top 30%, were 8.5 to 12.5 points. So that's not even close to a perfect score, really, okay? But that's what was defined as rigorous adherence, and that did lower Alzheimer's risk by 53%. So okay, very encouraging. Now, if you look at the next group down, right, the middle tertile, their score was 6.5 to 8.5, okay, out of that 15, and still reduced risk by 35%. And they call that following the diet moderately well. Okay, so this is, if you read any kinds of articles or see stories about the MIND diet, I noticed that this is really where they put a lot of emphasis, right? That, hey, you can do it kind of well and still see a benefit, right? Which we all like to hear when it comes to nutrition, right? Because it's, there's no such thing as a perfect diet, and none of us can ever attain that. So we like to know that even though we're trying, we're still seeing a benefit. And that seems to be the case with the MIND diet. Also, the longer the MIND diet was followed, the better the results. Again, they followed these people for about 4.5 years, and they could tell differences within that time frame about the benefit of following it longer. Okay. And as people typically ask, well, how does this relate to other factors, right? Did they control for other factors in this research that might have explained some of these results, right? So in fact, they did. They controlled for most of the things we would all wonder about, right? They controlled for genetic predisposition, which can now be tested for in a lot of ways, age, gender, education, calorie intake, physical activity, and other cognitive stimulating activities, right? Perhaps doing word puzzles and reading and engaging in ways like that, okay? Any questions so far? I'll make sure everybody just making sense so far? Okay, good. Okay. Like I said, we are going to look a little bit more closely at the DASH and Mediterranean diets in just a moment. But people who have high adherence to either one of those diets do have reductions in Alzheimer's disease. But what's interesting here is they got negligible benefits from that moderate adherence, right? We just saw with the MIND diet, moderate adherence still had a significant impact on risk, but following Mediterranean or DASH moderately didn't have the same benefits. So what that means to me is that these researchers probably did a really good job of honing in on the elements of DASH and Mediterranean diets that do have the biggest impact on brain health, okay? So I think that should make us feel good about what's been included in the MIND diet. Strict adherence, though, to any three of them, MIND, DASH, or Mediterranean, will reduce your risk. Okay, so I want also people to know that there's still benefit to any three of those, but you do have to follow it pretty strictly. Okay. Only the MIND diet, again, countered Alzheimer's disease when it was followed some of the time, moderately well. Okay. And the one thing I want to point out before we move forward too is that the details of this diet are not well fleshed out. Okay. You will see, I'm sure, after today, if you go Google this and want more information, you are going to see a lot of kind of conflicting pieces of detail. I've done my best to try to cull through that, looking at the actual research articles, looking at other interpretations online of the research and what it means. So I've done my best to kind of cull through it for you, but I do just want to be very upfront and transparent in that some of these details are not apparent to anybody. Okay. There is still a lot of speculation about, oh, what's included in this category or that category as we look at some of these foods. It's not all there, but again, I think we have a pretty good sense of what this diet should look like, and that's what we're going to focus on in a few moments. Okay, so this is a little jumbly here, I know this information, but I did want to just present it so that you could have an idea of the components of DASH, Mediterranean, and MIND diets, okay, kind of on a more granular level. So DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, okay? So it was originally designed as a way to help people control their blood pressure through diet, okay? The Mediterranean diet, as a lot of us know, is a kind of traditional diet that's followed in countries near the Mediterranean, such as Greece and southern Italy and Spain. And these are elements of the diet that are prominent in that culture. And then, of course, we have the MIND diet that has, again, combined elements of each of these. Okay, so you can see here, though, that there's a few similarities. I tried to group it so that you could see what's emphasized on that top group, right? And what's kind of discouraged or minimized in that bottom group there that's separated out. And you can see that, right? Commonalities, plant-based. There's a lot of plant-based foods here, okay, in terms of fruits and vegetables and grains, beans and lentils and nuts and seeds. There's also a de-emphasis, right, of red meat, added sugars and sweets, as well as foods that are high in saturated fat, again, such as the red meats and high-fat dairy products. So if you want to look at this kind of as a global construct, you can see that there's a lot of similarities here, okay? And for anyone starting to make some dietary changes, that would be a great place to start. More plant-based, less sugar, less saturated fat, right? That's always a good thing. But we are here to talk about the MIND diet, and that's what we are going to focus on. Now, I think everybody has a handout in front of them that is this slide here. Okay, everybody have that? Great. This represents a week of the MIND diet, okay? So it's taking the recommendations of the MIND diet and putting them into a week's context. And I like that too, right? Because for a lot of people, it feels difficult maybe to follow recommendations on a day-to-day basis, right? And do that consistently. But if you have the leeway of a week, sometimes that feels a little bit more doable. Like, oh, today missed a couple check boxes today, but I still have the rest of the week to take care of that. And that feels like a little less pressure, I think. So we can see here, right? You want whole grains 21 times a week, which ends up being about 3 times a day. Okay, and we're going to look at each of these groups more in depth so you can see what specifically is included in each group. Berries, just 2 times a week. Okay, Beans 3 or more times a week, leafy greens 6 or more times, poultry 2 or more times, nuts 5 or more times, other vegetables 7 or more times, fish at least once, and everybody's a little bit more in depth too, okay? The butter and margarine, that's pretty straightforward, okay? In terms of what that is. Fast food, right? We're talking McDonald's, Arby's, you know, any kinds of places like that. Fried foods, okay? Anything that's breaded and deep fried, most kinds of cheese. And then the red meat, right? People are always a little confused about what exactly is red meat. Usually it means it walks on 4 legs, is usually the definition. Yeah, so beef, lamb, veal, pork products, okay? Now, there is going to be a little exception, perhaps, to pork tenderloin. This was one thing I could not figure out. Again, an example of where there's gaps in the information. But certainly pork products, those higher fat pork products like bacon and sausages, broths and ham, deli meats, right? Those higher fat deli meats and hot dogs. And then, of course, sweets and pastries probably is pretty self-explanatory. But again, just reminding people this is all your, you know, candy, chocolate, baked goods, ice cream, things like that. Okay. Any questions about these? And you know, remember, this doesn't say you can't have these things at all, right? It just means you're trying to minimize and maybe be a little bit more careful about how you indulge in some of these things. Okay. All right, so let's get to the meat of it here, and no pun intended, uh, in terms of what is included in each of these groups. Okay, so whole grains. Okay, there is something called refined grains and there's something called whole grains, okay? Refined grains are what we call the white stuff, right? The white bread, the white pasta, the white rice, okay? These are things that have been highly modified from their original form, where they have taken out a lot of the fiber and nutrients from that grain, and to get kind of like that nice fluffy texture we're all used to, right, with those white products. But again, you're losing a lot of the nutritional value from it, okay? So we want to focus on these whole grains, which would be 100% whole wheat breads, whole wheat pasta, brown rice, quinoa. Those are all very popular ones. Popcorn's also a whole grain. Does that surprise anybody? Yeah, not movie butter popcorn. That's not what we're talking, okay? You know, sensibly seasoned popcorn, all right? uh, but yeah, popcorn is a whole grain. Quinoa, like I said, buckwheat, bulgur, barley, millet, farro. These are things that are becoming a little more mainstream. You probably could find them at your local Kroger if you were looking to experiment a little. And I know that quite a few people are following gluten-free diets, so I try to indicate here which of these whole grains are also gluten-free, if that's a concern for you, okay? But pretty much any kind of grain product you want to buy, you can easily find in a whole grain version now. At Kroger, at Walmart, at Meijer, wherever you shop, for pretty much the same price, okay? It is just that mainstream now. So we just want to remind folks about that. Berries, right? We love to hear that berries are part of this diet. They're kind of nature's candy, right? We can kind of get our sweet fix maybe from some berries. The research points out that the strawberries and blueberries have been identified as the most potent type of berries, but we can also put blackberries and raspberries in here as well. But I'm guessing that for most people, strawberries and blueberries are the main type of berry they'd be consuming anyhow. Now, unfortunately, right now in February, it's not berry season. But you can get frozen berries, right, that don't have any sugar added, okay? And use those in smoothies and mix in your yogurt. There's lots of ways to do berries all throughout the year. Certainly when they're back in season, you want to stock up, okay? Beans and lentils. any kind of bean. We're talking black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, white beans, soybeans, and lentils of any color. There's red lentils, there's brown lentils, there's green lentils, okay? But these are great high fiber, high protein, plant-based foods, okay? Any questions about these groups? Hopefully, as we're going through these groups, what people are thinking is, I kind of already eat those, or maybe I already like those things, or I'm familiar with that, right? I could probably incorporate more of that. These are not foreign foods, right? These are foods that are very accessible, things that a lot of us already eat and enjoy on a regular basis. And the Mind diet just might be more cognizant of how often you're consuming these things. All right, so those leafy greens, right? We're hearing about those all the time, right? They are a powerhouse for a lot of different vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients, okay? But again, part of the Mind diet because of their relation to brain health. I'd say probably pretty much anything is included here other than iceberg lettuce. That would not be my lettuce of choice for folks here, okay? If you're trying to get as much nutrition as you can from your lettuce or your salad, but certainly anything romaine on up, right? Romaine, arugula, spinach, baby spinach, kale, and any kind of greens, okay? Chicken or turkey, that's pretty much what we have in the poultry category, okay? Preferably, without skin, they're gonna say, right? Because that's gonna lower the saturated fat content. Preferably without breading or being fried, of course, that undoes some of the good that you get there. And like I said, this could possibly include pork tenderloin based on what I could kind of determine from the research. So if you do enjoy pork tenderloin and you want that to be a part of your poultry rotation, I think that would be fine. And then nuts. Who doesn't love nuts? Right? And any nut counts. It doesn't, sometimes people think, oh, it's only walnuts are good or almonds are good. That's not true. Any nut is going to have a benefit, okay, because of those very heart healthy fats that all nuts have, okay? And even, just a lowly peanut, right? Accessible, inexpensive, right? Yummy. Peanuts are just fine too, okay? Vegetables, look at that lovely list of vegetables. I couldn't even fit them all on here, okay? But these are the vegetables that were specified in the Mind diet research, okay? So I just want you to know it doesn't mean it's to the exclusion of other vegetables that you don't see here, but these are what were specifically mentioned as part of the Mind research, okay? But again, these are all, I'd say probably the most common vegetables for a lot of people, okay? What's encouraging on there to me is potato, corn, lima beans, right? Some of those starchier vegetables, right? These are also included here as well. Fatty fish of any kind is really what the Mind diet recommends, but they do make the note that fatty fish, right, that has those very healthy omega-3 fatty acids are what particularly is good for brain health. So that would include things like salmon, tuna, sardines, herring, anchovies, trout, mackerel. Again, not necessarily things that are always in your rotation, but maybe you be motivated to expand your horizons, but certainly salmon and tuna. And it can be canned salmon and tuna. Those are very inexpensive, very accessible, very easy to use. It can include those as well, okay? And then last but not least, the wine, okay? Now this is a 5-ounce glass. Yeah, 5-ounce glass. Most wine glasses will hold much more than that, easily 12, okay? So maybe you want to invest in some smaller wine glasses, maybe you want to measure, okay? But just be aware it is 5 ounces. This is really what's kind of considered a therapeutic dose, okay? That's how we're looking at food in this setting, right? It's therapeutic, all right, for a certain disease. And so, much less might have a little bit of benefit, but much more is not really going to have a benefit either, okay? And that's what we want to remember. This is the magic number. And this is also on a daily basis, not I'm going to have my 5-ounce, all my 5-ounce glasses on Friday and Saturday night. It doesn't really work like that, okay? This is meant to be, again, yes, therapeutic and, kind of a dose situation. Just like you would take any medicine, right? You wouldn't take all your bottle of antibiotics on one day of the week, right? You take a little bit every day. That's the point. That's how it helps you, okay? So that's how we want to look at the wine here. In red or white wine, are included here, okay? So either one, whichever one you enjoy. Okay, so everybody also has this on their handout, okay? I thought these two images here were probably going to be the most useful and practical for you guys to away with today. But this is from Canadian Living, which is just really a lifestyle magazine. But this was the only place I could find something like this, okay? This week-long meal plan of the Mind diet, right? Like I said, this stuff is still so in its infancy. There are very few resources out there like this, okay? So I was really happy to find it, so I didn't have to create it myself. But yeah, I think this is a really nice representation and looking through it with how they've designed the meals and snacks to hit all of those guidelines you're trying to hit for the Mind diet in a week. Following something like this would do that for you, okay? And again, simple things, right? That's what struck me. These are not complicated things. They don't require fancy preparation. They don't require going to any kind of special grocery store to get your hands on these things. Okay, you can buy all this stuff at Kroger, probably for a very moderate price, and a lot of us already eat and enjoy on a regular basis. Any questions, thoughts at this point? We doing okay? Yes. Yeah. I'd go for the water. Yeah. Yeah. So, and one thing I realized I didn't emphasize, because it was more like a global thing, that olive oil should be your main oil of choice as part of the Mind diet. I know it's specified there on that week's representation of the Mind diet. If it were tuna packed in olive oil, go for it, right? But if it's maybe any other kind of oil, I would skip and add your own olive oil later if you want, or just get it packed in water. But that's a great question. Yeah. Yes. Good stuff in it, whether you get the regular or light, extra light, virgin oil. So there, we might want to figure out a way for me to send some separate resources about the olive oil, because if you Google olive oil, what's good to buy, something like that, there is quite a bit of debate right now about how much of the olive oil that's sold in our grocery stores is actually real olive oil that has these health benefits we're talking about. Okay, there is a lot of evidence now to show us that a lot of the olive oils we are buying at Kroger and Meijer have been cut with other types of oils, have been adulterated in some ways, have been processed in ways that are not preserving the actual healthy properties of the oil itself. So really beyond, I mean, the light and extra virgin is more about the taste and the application, right, in terms of how you're going to use it. But in buying olive oil itself, it does tend to stand that the pricier olive oils are the higher quality ones. Ones that have been exclusively produced in California tend to be also good olive oils. That's the one I buy right now. It's like California Olive Ranch or something. It's got the little seal on there, and it's an easy one to find. But whew, boy, it costs a little bit more than the one I was buying before, right? But again, I know this is a pure product. I'm going to get the health benefit of it. And you don't need a lot to get the benefit, is the point either, right? Of the olive oil. So that's kind of a long answer to what seemed like a simple question, and I can certainly follow up with folks to give you more guidance on that. But yeah, you do want to do a little bit of due diligence with buying that olive oil. Make sure you're getting a good product that you're going to get that health benefit from. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, it is a good question. A lot of people think you can't cook with olive oil, which is also a little bit of a myth. Olive oil can have a pretty high smoke point, right? So that's why people say you can't cook with it, because it has a lower smoke point. But for most applications of sautéing and simple stir frying on the stovetop and all of that, absolutely you can use olive oil for those things. Okay. Yes.
So you're supposed to have poultry twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to have fish once a week.
Mm-hmm.
You're a vegetarian.
Right.
A lot of cultures, a lot of religions follow a vegetarian diet.
Yeah.
What do you just replace it with the rest here, or are those things specific to this diet that it then deletes?
Yeah, that is a really good question. My guess would be, because again, the fish and the poultry being together 3 times a week are still a pretty small part of that overall, 15-point score, right? That if people were, especially vegetarians, are probably replacing those things with beans and lentils, which are emphasized even more than poultry and fish, that would probably even out in terms of, kind of where they fall on that point score that we were talking about to get the benefit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah, that hadn't occurred to me in preparing this and looking through the research, but I would have to say from a practical standpoint, if people are replacing those things with the beans and lentils that are also encouraged, you'll probably come out pretty similar in terms of benefit. But yeah, Beth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, like I say, you want to think about that 15-point score. And those 15 points are based on the things that are emphasized and minimized, right? There's 15 of them on your sheet there. That's what you have, okay? If you count them all up, right? There's, I think, 10 things total, including the olive oil, to emphasize, and there's 5 things to minimize. That's where each of them gets scaled on a 0 to 1 scale in this research. And so the wine would be 1 point of that, right? If you didn't drink wine for, maybe cultural or other health reasons, right? That's just 1 point out of the 15. And so as long as you're, kind of getting points in those other areas throughout the week, remember that middle tertile was 6.5 to 8.5 points out of 15. And they were seeing what, a 35% reduction in Alzheimer's risk. So even again at that, still significant lowering of risk. Does that kind of help to address that? And that goes for probably the same thing that Terry was asking too about the fish and the poultry, right? If you just look at this on pure point basis, right, it's really very straightforward, right? So I know I'm not getting the points in this area. Let me make sure I get the points in these areas that I can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Okay, so the mind diet in practice, right? So we've, I think gotten a good overview now of what's included in the mind diet in terms of quantities and types of foods. But I kind of want to give you my perspective as a dietitian, since most of my time is spent helping people operationalize this information, right? We all have access to nutrition information all the time, right? That's not really the problem for a lot of people. It's, how do I kind of think about this? How do I approach it? How do I adopt it into my everyday life? Okay. So like I said, I cannot emphasize enough, and neither can most of the articles on this research. You don't have to do the mind diet perfectly to see results. And doesn't everybody love to hear that when it comes to a diet? You don't have to do it perfectly, okay? To me, that's a big problem in this culture, right? Is that there's too many diets and there's too many rules, and it's setting people up for failure all the time, okay? But this is a great diet that you don't have to worry about doing perfectly, okay? Even that top tertile wasn't doing it perfectly, okay? So that hopefully takes the pressure off a little bit. I believe that this is something that can be adopted as a sustainable lifestyle, right? Like I said, these are foods that you can buy anywhere for a reasonable cost, okay? That can be prepared without really having, too many advanced culinary skills, okay? And can be used in various ways to adapt your tastes and preferences, you and your family, okay? So that's what matters to me as a dietitian. When people say, hey, I want to do this, I want to adopt this diet or this, do these things. I'm always concerned about the sustainability, right? Can you maintain this as a lifestyle? Because if not, what really is the point of doing it, right? And we saw with that research, the longer people did the mind diet, the better the results they had. So it behooves you to find a way to do this in a way that's sustainable, that you can do it for a long time, okay, and reap the benefits of that. It does emphasize, like we said, plant-based diet, plant-based foods, what we call nutrient-dense foods, right? Things that pack lots of fiber and good protein and healthy fats and phytonutrients in there, right? Prepared at home. Those 3 things, plant-based, nutrient-dense, prepared at home. 3 pillars of healthy eating for anybody, okay? Whether it strictly fits into the mind diet principles or not, those are good things for anyone to be aiming for. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. Yes, the question was, do avocados fit into the mind diet? And you know what? I'm going to say, huh, that is an excellent observation, really, because I'm thinking where in that chart is avocado? It was not listed specifically anywhere. But we know it's a very healthy fat. I suppose we could put it in vegetable list. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That is a really good question, and just kind of highlights the gaps of this knowledge that I didn't even recognize myself. But I'm going to go ahead and say I think avocado was on these examples in this weekly. I'm not sure if you guys saw avocado there. I've seen it in lots of other Mind Diet like recipes and resources. But yeah, I'm going to encourage avocado. I don't know what the Mind Diet is saying, but I'm going to go on record saying eat some avocado. That will be a fantastic addition to whatever you're doing as part of the Mind Diet. Okay, great question. This is also a good diet for overall health for the reasons we just talked about, because it's more plant-based, it's nutrient dense, you're preparing it at home, controlling what's in it, and it's also good for heart health. Okay, we know that DASH and Mediterranean receive such initial interest because of their impact on heart health. Okay, so the Mind Diet, again, what's good for the brain, it's good for the rest of you. It's good for your heart. It's good for your brain, right? It's all connected. Okay. So even if, again, you're reducing Alzheimer's incidence is not your main focus, and maybe it's heart health, overall health, this is still good stuff, right? I like this personally because it's an emphasis on what to eat, right? Most people, most of the points, 10 of those 15 points people were getting for these diets was about what they were eating, right? The other 5 points were more about what they weren't eating. But I always like it when a diet is talking more about what to eat instead of what not to eat. Because isn't that a problem with so many diets out there again, right? That it's focused on restriction and deprivation and what not to eat and what to avoid. And then, we're always left with, people saying, well, what can I eat? I feel like I can't eat anything, right? Once you get through reading all the rules about these various diets, okay? So I think it's always an empowering kind of position to think about what can I eat? What is encouraged, okay? And by default, right, when you're focusing on what to eat, less healthful things kind of get pushed off the plate without you even thinking about it, right? That is the great thing about this. It kind of takes care of some of those, higher fat meats or cheeses or sweets, right? Yeah, maybe easier said than done. But, some of this stuff just gets pushed out of the way without you even really thinking about it because you're focused on these other things that are good to eat, okay? So people often are surprised at the impact that that can have as well. So my advice really is to start simple. Okay, there are a lot of things listed here that you can start doing today or tomorrow. Okay, one of the top things that comes to mind is those whole grains, right? Didn't I say that pretty much every grain product you want to buy, you can find in a whole grain version. You want to buy something that says 100% whole grain or has a whole grain listed as the very first ingredient on the ingredient list. That's how you know. Okay, but again, some of those other grains that we looked at are whole grains inherently, like the quinoa, in the brown rice, in the oats, in the popcorn. Those are all naturally whole grain products, okay? Poultry instead of beef, you can do ground turkey, you can do ground chicken in place of all those, ground beef recipes very easily. Doing salads with meals, that seems to be a big emphasis in a lot of these like examples that you see of how to implement the Mind Diet. That is just a staple. We just have a salad before we have a meal, and that just kind of becomes the automatic habit to work in those leafy greens and vegetables. People, oh, was there? Yes, I know. I thought of that. I'm getting to that. I know. That's funny because it was in my mind as like a great thing, even though it didn't say it anywhere in the mind research, right? But a lot of think nuts are pretty tasty, right? Because they do have that fat in them. But again, it's that heart healthy fat. You want to try to get it minimally salted, right? We do want to keep an eye on that sodium, but they do sell a lot of lightly salted or unsalted versions of any kind of nut. So if you want something crunchy and a little salty, maybe that. instead of chips in the afternoon for your snack. Berries is a natural sweetener, like I said, right? We can mix those in our yogurt instead of maybe putting sugar or honey or other things in there. We can we can put them in our oatmeal instead of all the brown sugar and that sort of thing. Cheeses, like I said, I acknowledge this is probably one of the tougher ones, especially in our kind of American culture, right? One tip I give people is to use sharper cheeses. That if you are going to use cheese, use a sharper cheese, perhaps like a Parmesan or an extra sharp cheddar, because you don't need as much flavor. Right? A lot of us are after that kind of bite of the cheese in terms of flavor. So if you want a little on your salad, do some Parmesan or extra sharp grated cheddar. And maybe just start with that, right? Yeah, here's the avocado. Like I said, I just worked that in kind of subliminally, I guess, but I am encouraging avocado, absolutely. Avocado or hummus, which is bean-based, right? That's part of the Mind diet. Those beans, kind of a nice way, easy way to get those beans in. Use that on a sandwich instead of the traditional mayo cheese, right? That we're always using. And these things are actually available. A lot of sub shops that even if you're out getting a sub, a lot of times you can get those things on there instead. And maybe have a meatless dinner once a week, right? You hear about that Meatless Monday campaign, right? Again, because plant-based foods are always going to be good alternatives, all right? So even if you're not vegetarian, you're not trying to go vegetarian, that's not what we're trying to do here. But for a lot of us, even adopting one meatless dinner a week would be a change, right? Because again, our meals are often designed around the meat. That's what we're doing, okay? So it also pushes people to explore some different kind of culinary avenues as well. Once you start experimenting with more beans and lentils, right, you maybe get into other ethnic cuisines and flavors, and that can be really fun and exciting too. Okay. All right, so this is a couple resources here I wanted to end with. This is the one and only dedicated Mind diet website I could find that I could recommend. Let's put it that way. This is by a dietitian, actually, so I'm a little biased, but she's a dietitian named Maggie Moon. She's also a culinary expert, so she kind of combines these things and has created this website with a lot of free resources, recipes, okay, a blog. So I just wanted to share that with you if you're interested in going to get more information online. And then there's good old Amazon search to see what cookbooks are out there and how they're rated. These seem to be the most popular. Okay, there are not a ton of other Mind cookbooks out there, but these would be the top three. The first one here on the left is by Dr. Martha Claire Morris, who is actually the lead researcher with that Rush University team that developed the Mind diet. Okay, so this gets high ratings on Amazon. I would say if you want to hear it from the horse's mouth, right? She's the one involved in all the research and created the Mind diet. So Diet for the Mind is by her. The Mind diet, the middle one here, is by the Maggie Moon, the dietitian who has the website that I just showed on the slide previously. So this is her cookbook that you could buy, all right? And then this third one here, she is a nutritionist. Now, it's different than a dietitian. That's a long story. But anyway, she has some nutritional training, has worked for the USDA, is a culinary expert, and this looks probably like a decent option as well. So these are all about $10 to $15 priced on Amazon if you're, again, really interested in delving a little bit more into that. Okay. Well, I know you guys have asked some good questions all along, but hopefully we have a couple minutes to answer any more that you have here or from the online folks. No? Okay. Okay. Yes, online folks, please let me know if you have any questions. Anybody here? Other questions, thoughts? Yeah, yeah. Like, you're right. There's like gooseberries and lignan berries, and yeah, there's all kinds of things, right? Like I said, the strawberries and blueberries were what were highlighted in the research. I actually just put raspberries and blackberries on there just myself, just to give people some other options. But yeah, beyond that, but beyond the strawberries and blueberries, I couldn't definitively say. Mm-hmm. Good question. Yes, Susan. Other fruit just doesn't really negative or positive. It just wasn't part of the right. It just wasn't studied. It just was not part of that 15-point score, right? It was not part of that weekly protocol for the Mind diet. So, yeah. again, we know more plant-based foods, including fruit, are always going to be good. And if fruit can displace, again, some of those other things, that's really how we want to view it, right? What am I eating this in place of? How is this better than that, right? A good question, though. Yeah, so you can see how there's a lot of gaps, right? Where people go, what about this? This isn't mentioned, but I thought this was good, right? So it doesn't mean we want to make a judgment on something, just exactly. And chocolate. I'm waiting for the chocolate with the wine. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so we don't want to judge just because we don't see it there. Eggs is another perfect example, right? No, eggs are not mentioned anywhere, and people point that out online, right? Again, we don't want to say it's good or bad. It's just what you're eating, hopefully, the rest of the time outside of this. Yeah. Yes, they're a minimum. Yes. And if you, hold on. See this here? Sorry. And we can make sure people get this right, Lisa? Yeah. So you have it to refer to, but you can see, right, where it's greater than, equal to, or greater than, right? That's what the specifics are with that MIND diet, right? That it's at least that much, but more is also encouraged with those things, okay? Yeah.
Out there, especially with the Super Bowl, the whole brain diet and all that kind of jazz. And yes, I read about it. It seems incredibly rigorous. But nightshades. There's a lot of nightshades mentioned on the list here. Eggplant, tomato, that type of stuff. I don't really understand the whole nightshade thing. Can you explain the nightshade thing?
This is more information than anyone is going to care about, but my joke to my colleague Vanessa, the week before the Super Bowl, we talk about, oh, what do you make anything special for the Super Bowl and all this, and I go, I'm gonna have a nightshade party. Because there's a collective eye roll in the nutrition suite when we hear about Tom Brady and the nightshade diet, right? And not eating nightshades. I said, I'm going to have a party where it's all nightshades, and that's what we're going to eat on Super Bowl Sunday. And that just came from my frustration, again, about how much this is touted out there and all of that. And I am not anyone to say that that doesn't work for Tom Brady. Like, that's right. And I'm never to say something can't work for any individual, even though it may not work for most other people, right? But there just isn't the evidence to back up the fact that anyone should be worrying about including nightshades in their diet. The evidence is just not there. They are a class of vegetables. I am sorry. That includes, yeah, eggplant, tomatoes are the main ones, onions and garlic, perhaps, mushrooms, yeah. Yeah, and they say avoid those because they think it leads to inflammation. Yes, yes. So I'm glad to know people didn't know about it, because really there's no need to know about it. This is a good thing. But yes, the whole idea is that Tom Brady doesn't eat nightshades, and that's part of his diet and his performance. So that's fine. It's clearly working for him, right? But yeah, again, the evidence is not there that the average person like you and me here need to worry about eating these foods. Okay, absolutely not. Yes.
I have a question online that there's a lot of grains in this diet. And what are the nutritional effects on the body of the grain? This person says they tend to minimize grains.
Okay. That's a great question. And there are, that is kind of a thing now. People are doing a little bit more, going back to some of this low carb thing, right? I get that. And that does work for some people, right? But remember that this is only at least 3 a day, which isn't a ton. We're talking basic serving sizes here, like half a cup of cooked rice or pasta, right? Half a cup of cooked oats, 3 cups of popped popcorn, right? These are not huge amounts, okay? So, for a lot of people, even watching carbs, as long as they're focusing on getting those whole grains in as part of their carbs, that's kind of what I would say should be the focus. Yeah. I hope that helps. And like I said, I put the gluten-free options on there too for people who also feel like that might be part of the reason they avoid some of those grains. Anything else? Yeah.
Is this appropriate for any age? In my house, I have a 7-year-old. I'm with a 70-year-old.
Yes. I'd say, I mean, there's always going to be different nutrient, micronutrient needs, sure, based on age, like with iron or calcium, things like that. So you would want to kind of maybe keep an eye on that. Maybe, be sure you're letting the kids maybe drink some milk or eat yogurt when they want, and maybe they get to have a little extra cheese, right? But yeah, for by and large, right, what you saw there is the skeleton for a week, right, would be totally appropriate with plenty of room to work other things into. Yeah, Beth. It's not. Mm-mm. That's another thing, right? Like the avocado and the eggs, and yeah, it's just not specified. Okay, and in the cheese thing, even alone was confusing because some places it said high fat cheese, and other places it just said cheese. So there's still speculation out there that, well, what if I switch to like a 2% cheese, right? That has a little less saturated fat, because that's probably the main culprit we're concerned about with the cheese. Is that any better? Who knows? Maybe it is. But from what I could tell, it was just cheese. So that's how I presented it, because all of it is fairly high in saturated fat. If it has any fat content. But yeah, there's no specification about yogurt or cottage cheese, ricotta, things like that. But again, I still think in moderate amounts, those should absolutely be what's rounding out, again, this diet for sure. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, so a non-dairy cheese would not be part of that, would be my guess, right? I mean, you can call it cheese, but it's not cheese for purposes of the mind diet, right? Yeah, so I would say if you're using like a non-dairy cheese, like a soy cheese or a vegan type cheese and all that, that is not what they're talking about here. They are talking about cow milk based, high fat cheese. Yeah, great questions, you guys. I really appreciate your attention. Thanks for coming out today. And again, please, we'll be sure to get this information to you. And please, again, contact me, Karen McNees, at UK Health and Wellness if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
You are welcome. What? That's funny because I never use that word. I don't know where that came from, but